We're standing here with Georg from Mangold, from Marsh, and we've just wrapped up a panel on the Nordic exit market. And I'm going to try and summarize it very briefly. The activity has been picking up in my humble thoughts, but I've managed to bring with me one of the experts from the panel, and we'll be asking first of all, what do you think has been the sort of key drivers? How do you see the Nordic region in terms of exits compared to maybe, let's say, Central Europe?
I think it's a bit of a diverse situation within the Nordics. There is no such thing as the Nordic region. Of course, the countries are different from each other. We have heard that the smaller mid-sized market in Denmark has been a bit sluggish in picking up. Probably they're now where, for example, the German market was a year ago, where sellers were reluctant in putting their assets to the market because they wanted to wait and see for full year results picking up and showing into the right direction after the crisis. But then again, Denmark has, as we all know, has been hit by the crisis more intensely than the other countries. Germany was exactly in that spot a year ago, where everyone was hoping for a quicker return to normality in the beginning of 2010, but it really has picked up in the second half only. Throughout the rest of Europe, I think the UK, it's fair to say, they were the busiest right from the beginning of 2010, and their deal flow is pretty intense ever since. And that's also what we're seeing for the Nordic region, like all across the Nordic region now, where things have, in the larger space, have picked up quite significantly. A lot of private equity interest and activity too. So I think it's all going into the right direction, is fair to say.
So going to the right direction, but at the same time, the European map is not in sync.
No.
What's the story then with regard to, if we compare private equity activity with regard to against the activity from the industrial side? Where do we see the money thrown around in the Nordic region? Is it the case that particularly private equity is very active at the moment?
I think they have a lot of ground to recover. They weren't very active over the last couple of years, really 2 years at least. And we're now starting to see more private equity activity again on the buy side. We have seen deals where private equity was selling to corporates, but now we see them on both sides of the table again, and level of activity has dramatically increased there. Okay. But there's still a lot of corporates who have weathered the crisis well and who are now making strategic acquisitions as add-ons for their general business.
All right. And considering the different options for the for exits, we have three very obvious ones. That's going to the stock exchange, that's selling to a private equity firm, or that's selling to an industrial. I got the perception in the panel that the private equity track is hot on the exit side, and as you said, the industrials are prepared to get a move, but the Nordic exchanges have been a little bit more sluggish this year than they were last year. At the same time, I'm thinking about different types of processes when you're actually selling the business, and the nitty-gritty about that. There were comments both in our panel and in other panels about the auction process as such, also with regard to valuations. What are your thoughts on that? Are people questioning that format? Will we and have we been seeing more exclusivity-driven, smaller groups of buyers, or other types of scenarios becoming more sort of popular, if you like?
I think that auctions are kind of a mixed bag. I mean, obviously there were very successful auctions from a sell side perspective in 2007, and those are the transactions that buyers are not so fond of. The ones who actually did make it were not so fond of today, most likely. Also, what we've been hearing on a number of occasions now from various buyers and sellers is that actually an auction isn't always the most competitive way in getting the highest purchase price for the asset you're trying to sell. We've heard buyers say, who had tell us that they had a sneaky suspicion that they overpaid in a proprietary situation, because they did everything the seller wanted in order to keep that proprietary situation. They didn't want anyone to be brought into the into the competition.
I see.
And they were willing to pay a premium for that, and so sometimes the world can be turned upside down in a competitive auction scenario versus a proprietary situation scenario.
And finally, before we wrap this up, in terms of thinking about the type of advice you are giving, are you seeing any particular trends on that side? Are people doing tougher due diligence on certain things, or are they buying hedges, insurances against other sort of scenarios for some reason in 2011?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sellers want to be better prepared for anything that the buyers might or bidders might come up with in the transaction process, which I think makes sense.
Yes.
And also the difference in position, the gaps between sellers and buyers have widened over the years. So buyers want more protection when making a deal, when signing an SPA, a purchase agreement. Sellers, even corporate sellers, are becoming more conscious about what their balance sheet looks like post-closing, and that's where obviously our policy or insurance solutions can help bridge that gap between sellers and buyers, and that's where we've seen a lot of activity also in the Nordics lately.